I'm going to be showing you how to replace the front gas tank on a 1997 f250 HD with the 5.8 liter. Here's the new tank right here. I've already got it painted, pre-painted and everything. But first I'm going to show you all the steps you need to do to remove this tank. First thing you need to do is to come over here under the hood. And disconnect your negative battery cable. This way you don't wind up frying all the electronics in your fuel pump or anything like that. And sorry for the shaky camera, it's hard to do this with one hand. Alright. Alright. That's how you disconnect the negative battery cable. Alright, next you'll need to remove your fuel filler neck, which is held on by these three, 1, 2, 3, little bitty 7mm head bolts. And you're going to need to have something that has a little bit of an extension on it, because the fuel door kind of gets in your way. But anyway, I will come back right after I disconnect this. Alrighty, I already got those out, but just as a note, you might want to soak these with some penetrating oil, because actually I was rather surprised. One of those little bolts actually broke the head off of it. But they're pretty tight in there. I just replaced my back tank a couple weeks ago, and they weren't near as bad. But just a side note, if they're kind of hard to get out, maybe soak them in some penetrating oil a little bit. And I recommend soaking all the bolts in this project before you take them off with some penetrating oil for at least a day or two. But alrighty, well, I'll take you to the next step in just a moment. Alright, now we're on the underside of the truck. And this is the fuel filler neck right here. And it runs down to these two clamps. That clamp right there holds the tube to the chassis. And that tube right there just connects the rubber tube to the metal tube. Right now I'm disconnecting that tube so that when you pull the tank down, it actually can move that way. But I might wind up removing both, I'm not sure yet. I can't remember which I had to do on the back, so I'll be right back after this. Alrighty, we're back under the truck again. I already got the hose clamp disconnected right here. See how this whole thing will move now. And that'll allow that to come up out of there. But anyway, next on the list is you must remove this clamp that holds your parking brake lines, because it's obviously in the way of that bolt under there and that bolt there. But then after you remove this big bolt, which is I'm trying to remember, let me see, a 1/2 inch on this brake line bolt, and these are 10mm bolts that go all the way around. If you have an HD anyway. If you do not have an HD, you do not have this big honking metal skid plate under here. So if you do not have an HD, skip the following steps. But if you do have an HD, which isn't many of you, you remove these 10mm bolts. One there, one there, one here, one here. And then on the other side over here by the drive shaft, you've got 2 more. So you got a total of 6 10mm bolts holding your skid plate on. But you must also remove this bolt right there to get to those bolts. So I'm going to put the phone down and we're going to start from after the skid plate removal. Alright, now that I've gotten my skid plate off, I've taken my floor jack and I have supported the weight of the gas tank on the floor jack and a block of wood. Here's my skid plate. I hope none of you have this skid plate because it is a monster to get off. The 2 bolts on that bracket right there broke off. Well, not broke off, they stripped out. So I had to actually cut the bracket off because you don't want to be using a hot torch near a leaking gas tank. But anyway, back to the project at hand. You support the gas tank with a block of wood and a jack stand, like so, to hold the weight of it. So once you undo these 2 straps, the tank doesn't just fall on the floor and rip your wires out and your fuel lines and all that fun stuff. But anyway, over here on this side, let me get back under the truck here. we've got 2 bolts. There's one, and the head of the bolt at over the top of this frame rail is a 13 millimeter, and this is a 15 millimeter. You have one here. Then on the next little cross member down, you have one right there, which my wrench is already on. And once you remove those straps should come loose. But make sure you have the weight of the tank supported. You will not be happy. Alright, I'll be back in a few minutes. Alrighty, we're back. There's tank strap, the rear one. There's the front one. Once you get those bolts undone, they swing down. Sometimes they have some glue on them or some gunk and stuff. You just kind of got to pull them down. Be careful not to break those. But anyway, they swing down like this, so your tank can come on down. But now what you got to do is you got to slowly lower the jack. And here on the passenger side, top of the tank, right up in here, there's going to be your electrical connector and your fuel lines. So I'm going to slowly lower this, and I'll get back and I'll show you where that's all at. I forgot to mention, before you lower the tank, you must undo this fitting right here, and then slide that pipe out so your hose can drop down with the tank. Alright, here we are. Top of the tank, there's your 2 fuel lines. There's your electrical wiring that runs back up the frame rail to, where'd that go? All the way to an electrical connector right there. And you unhook that connector, and that unhooks your fuel pump. And then the fuel lines you unhook. And way back there at the back, if you can see, that big white thing has to pop out. Anyway, I'll show you here in a minute once I get those out. Alrighty, and I'm back. Sorry about that, guys. I would have showed you how to actually pull everything out, but it's a little hard to do while holding the phone, camera, etc., etc. Anyway, here is your electrical connector, and right there on the back, you see that little tab right here? You gotta push that in to pull that off of the out of the other connector. The fuel lines, they're a pain in the butt. I'll show you in a second how you get those off. You're supposed to get a specialty tool. I bought one. It's not the right size, doesn't fit, etc. But I managed. And this hole is where you pull that big white plug out of, which I shall show you here just in a second once I get over there. Alright. By the way, make sure when you're taking these fuel lines off, you wear safety glasses. I often forget to do that and get an eye full of gas. But anyway, you see those 3 little tabs in there. You gotta click those in and then push the line in, push the line towards the pump a little bit, then pull it out. Both lines have that. You can see better on this one. If you ever have a fuel line leak too, it's these O-rings in here. Mine seem to be really good actually. And this big old thing is for your evap, and also it's the vent line for the fuel tank. And that's what plugs in that big old hole. But alrighty, well I'll swap everything over and I'll show you in a minute. Alrighty, as you can see I got everything swapped from the old cruddy, rusty, crappy tank to the new shiny black tank. And got everything all hooked up, got the fuel filler hose hooked to it, got the little rubber grommet that goes from for that little white thing. That is very important, do not forget that. That has to come from that tank to this tank. The locking ring, there's only one way this fuel pump can go in here. It's pretty straightforward. The main thing is getting this locking ring off the old one. Normally I just pry them off because they're so rusty. It's basically like paper. But other than that, that's about it. And everything goes back together pretty much the opposite of the way you took it apart. But I'll try and catch some video on the install. Alrighty. Talk to you guys in a few minutes.